Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Recreational Astronomy Night Meeting, online edition of the RASC Toronto Centre. This is our last meeting for the year, but we'll definitely continue in January. My name is Paul Markov, coming to you from Markham, Ontario. And besides introducing the speakers, I'm always on the lookout for more presentations. So if you have something in mind, please get in touch with me. We have openings for the February and later meetings. Just a reminder that our meetings are now held on the first Wednesday of each month. Before we start the presentations, I'd like to recognize our top-notch technical team, comprised of Andrew and Betty Reed, Emma Seabrook, Ward Legros, and Anya Cholucci. Thank you for making these online presentations possible for us. We have 3 presentations this evening as usual, and we expect to be done around 9:30. Andy Beaton is back presenting the sky this month. Reza Mohamed is a first-time speaker, and he'll tell us about how he stacks and processes his astro-images. And we have Malcolm Park joining us to tell us about his aurora chasing adventure. Tom Luton will then close the meeting with the announcements as usual. If you have questions for our speakers, please enter them in the YouTube chat box, and Emma will ask the speakers your questions. And if you're attending this meeting for the first time, whether you're a member or not, please let us know through the chat box as well. Let's get the presentation started with Andy and the sky this month.
Hi, my name is Andy Beaton. I'm speaking to you from my secret basement fortress in downtown Toronto, Ontario, and I'm here to talk about the sky this month. As usual, the stuff I want to go through: the big picture, key dates, a total solar eclipse for a change, the moon, planets, deep sky stuff, a double star, a variable star, and whatever's going on in this world of spaceflight. So the big picture, step out tonight around 8 p.m. and look to the south, and this is what we ought to be seeing. Seeing our usual fall constellations and more than a few planets heading down towards the western horizon. Maybe just a last glimpse at the summer constellations, Aquila, Capricornus, and Vulpecula still there. And far off to the east, all our usual winter constellations will be rising: Taurus, Orion, and all the rest. But a good parade of planets there: Saturn, Jupiter, Neptune, Uranus, Ceres, and Neptune will be following on later. If we step ahead to the next meeting, if we show up at 6 o'clock in the morning and take a look at the morning sky, we can already get an early glimpse of the spring and early summer constellations, Bootes, Hercules, Virgo, etc. Not so much in the way of planets at this time. All the planets seem to be at the evening rather than the morning this time. Maybe get a glimpse of Mars just before sunrise, but not much else. The nights are getting longer for a few more weeks. This is the peak astrophotography time of the year. We're going to get the longest nights coming up as we approach the winter solstice. Astronomical twilight is at 6:05 tonight, and dark sky goes until 5:35 in the morning. By the time we get around to our next meeting, we'll have been through the longest night, and things will be getting shorter again. By the next meeting, twilight's finished at 6:20 and starting at 5:52. One of the things I like about standard time is when I'm figuring these times out, I don't have to try and figure out which way the adjustment of the clock goes when I'm looking at universal time. So this is what's going to appear on your clock. You don't have to try and calculate something different. So key dates of fun stuff coming up: total solar eclipse in a few days. The winter solstice is coming. New moon on January 2nd. The moon is at apogee on the 18th and perigee on January 1st. I always put that note in there to say which is far and which is close, because I've been doing this for decades and I can never remember. So if I don't, I'm sure other people don't. We have the full moon on December 19th. We got two really good meteor showers coming up, the Geminids on December 14th and the Quadrantids on January 3rd. The total solar eclipse, December 4th. The best view is from Antarctica. You may see it from the South Pacific if you're afloat in a boat out there. I was asking the administrators here how far this program reaches, and I was astonished at how many people around the world can see it. I would say the odds are very low that someone who's in Antarctica right now doing some research is going to be watching for the eclipse and watching this this webcast as well, but you never know. And if nothing else, anybody who's interested in seeing the eclipse, we can do it the modern, new-fashioned way and watch it on the internet. NASA is going to have a stream, and I'm sure that if their performance isn't great, you can find a dozen other streaming sites that will be showing the eclipse. The moon, the thing we love to hate. First quarter, December 10th, full moon, December 18th, last quarter, December 26th, and the new moon on next January 2nd. The lunar X, for people who like searching for that, people who don't know about it, it's an intersection point between two craters. And at a certain point, when the sun's at the right angle, the sun will illuminate the rims of the craters. The dark in the center of the craters will make it look like there's an X written on the moon. December 11th, unfortunately starting at 7:30 in the morning. I've gone looking for the lunar X before, and I've seen it at night. I've never had any luck trying to see it during the day, but give it a try. The worst thing will happen is you'll get to have a look at the moon. So we've got planets as always. Mercury is visible in the evening once we get closer to the end of the month, around Christmas or so. Venus is disappearing. Right now it's still visible low in the west, clouds permitting after sunset, but it will be disappearing behind the sun soon enough. Mars is behind the sun right now, but it's going to be coming out before the next meeting, showing up before sunset. Before sunrise, the other one. The big planets still visible in the evening, although they're getting lower. Saturn is still visible, but it's never very high now. Once the sun is set, it's pretty much down its sun following path. Jupiter is close behind, extremely bright, but and quite obvious, but you're not going to be able to see a lot of details. The moons and the rings are still going to be visible though, so even if you're not going to get a spectacular high detail view, if you have friends and family that still want to see planets and spectacular sights of moons and rings, this is they're still up there and still going to be good. Uranus and Neptune are better placed. They're still up in the sky during the evening into midnight. Uranus just passed opposition a short while ago, so it's in an excellent position for viewing. It's as big as it's going to get. If you're under dark skies, you should be able to see it with the naked eye. It's somewhere around 6 magnitude. Neptune follows behind in Aquarius, and you should be able to see it until midnight. It's also not quite at opposition, but pretty close. So if it's not the best view you're ever going to get, it's going to be close enough. I don't know if anybody has ever seen any detail on the planetary disks with an amateur telescope. If they have, I would be fascinated to hear it. I know I haven't, but I'm always surprised what the other amateurs out there can manage. Pluto and Ceres, the dwarf planets. Pluto's in Sagittarius and is way too close to the sun to be seen. Ceres is in Aquarius, kind of halfway between Uranus and Neptune, and I think it's about 8th magnitude right now. So if you're looking to see a dwarf planet and take it off your list, Ceres is your best choice. So I always like to do a little bit of deep sky stuff. M45, the Pleiades, you can't miss it when you step outside. It's the one that looks like the little wee dipper in the constellation of Taurus. Even when I'm in the city, I can see it. So, and I live right downtown, so it should be visible to just about everybody with the naked eye. If it's with binoculars, it's even better. A rich field telescope, even better yet. If you're interested in testing the quality of the sky or the quality of your vision, counting the visible stars is a good way to do it. Downtown Toronto, I can see the Pleiades are there, but I can't necessarily make out individual stars depending on how hazy it is or depending on how my eyes are feeling that day. On the other hand, there are reputable stories of top flight amateur astronomers who are able to see 13 of them, and sometimes even more, although those are less reliable claims. And there we go, there's M45, everybody's favorite open cluster, or if it isn't, one of your top ones anyway. And because it's not really a challenging object to find, I like to throw in some extra stuff to make it a bit more of a challenge for more experienced observers. I mean, the big one is going to be spotting the reflection nebula. And that requires clear skies, dark skies, and most importantly, really clean optics. It doesn't take much of a smudge on an eyepiece to recreate that fuzzy blue light around your star. Variable star observers there's a few variable stars in the cluster, but Pleione Bu Tauri is the brightest and most obvious. Goes from 4.5 to 5.5, 4.8 to 5.5 magnitude. So it's pretty obvious when it's changing brightness. If you're the kind of guy who looks for double stars, like my friend Blake, Asterope is a double star, 2.8 arc minutes apart. Pretty bright stars. You might actually be able to see both of them with the naked eye if you have really sharp vision. Otherwise, you'll probably just see it as a slightly misshapen star. You may detect a certain oblongness to the star, but not actually be able to separate it. It'll be easy with binoculars, though. So comets and meteors. As I was saying before, we've got 2 big meteor showers coming up. The Geminids on December 14th. Both of these meteor showers are very short ones. We're really looking at one night where everything's going to happen, and past that one night, the density of the shower falls off very rapidly. So short duration for the Geminids, and also a lot of moon. It's moving on very close to the full moon. So unless you're up very, very late at night, early in the morning, you're going to have a lot of interference from moonlight and not see as many meteors as you would hope. The quadrantids are a much better option for us. January 3rd, it's going to be freezing cold, of course. Another short duration shower, good for one night, but the moon is almost entirely gone, and we could hope for up to 120 meteors an hour. Now, the thing about the Geminids is it's one of those showers that every now and then you get a massive meteor storm. I don't think anyone's predicting it this year, but you never know. It might be worth sticking your head out of at 4 o'clock in the morning and seeing if there's a meteor storm going on. And if not, go back to sleep where it's warm. The Ursids, much smaller, less dense meteor shower. I think we're looking at tens of meteors per hour instead of 60 or 100. And again, very close to the full moon, so it's not going to be an optimal shower for observing with. And then we get a few not quite meteor showers, meteor dribbles. We're looking at 1 or 2 meteors an hour. The monocerotids, the Coma Berenices, and the December Leonis minorids. All very small showers, but long duration. I would never advise anyone to go looking for them, but if you are out and you see a meteor coming from some spontaneous direction, you can track it back to its source and possibly identify it as a member of one of these minor meteor showers. So comets. Comet C2021A1 Leonard. That's the big one everyone's talking about. Visible early in the morning. Someone was telling me it's very close to Arcturus. I'm not a very early in the morning kind of guy, and it's been cloudy here for a good long time, so I have not seen it. But I'm also hearing rumors that it may be an outburst, possibly up to visible magnitude, 6 magnitude or so. Absolutely unverified. I haven't seen it or seen any official discussion of its brightness, just people talking about it on forums. If you live somewhere where it's going to be clear between now and the next few weeks, get out there and see if you can see it. See if you do get a naked eye comet. It's been a while since we've had one. Within a few weeks, I believe it's going to be getting closer to the sun and looping around, so we'll lose track of it for a while. So next couple of weeks are probably your best opportunity to try and see it. 67P Churyumov-Gerasimenko, 9th magnitude in Cancer. It's been hanging around for a while. It's still pretty good as far as small telescope comets goes. C2019 L3 Atlas in Lynx should be visible for, if not all of the night, most of it. 8P Tuttle, 10.4 in Centaurus. That one's, you're going to have to carefully plan your observing time for when Centaurus is actually visible from your location. If you're here in Toronto, I would say the odds are low. If you're viewing from New Zealand or Australia, I'd say your odds are very high. And 29P Schwarzmann-Walkman 1, 10.6 magnitude in Perseus. These are all the comets that are currently being reported with a magnitude of greater than 11. There may be, actually I know there are many, many dimmer ones than that. But for those, I'm going to suggest that you head to your favorite astronomy software or to one of the comet finding pages on the internet. Otherwise, I would be here all night just listing the dozens of 14th magnitude comets. So I like double stars, and I picked a fun one this time, Sirius, Alpha Canis Majoris. We all know it as the brightest star in the sky. It's insanely obvious when we go out there and look at it. But the interesting fact is that it is a double star, and its companion, 8.4 magnitude, is a white dwarf, the closest one to Earth. There are a few white dwarfs you can see if you have a decent telescope, but this is certainly the easiest one to at least know where it is, if not necessarily see it. The problem with it is it's very close to Sirius, and Sirius is a bright star, and when you point your telescope at it, the glare is going to wipe out any possible sighting of an 8.4 magnitude companion, especially since it's only about 11 seconds away. I mean, if there were comparable brightness, it would be an easy double to split with the telescope, but with the disparity in brightness, it's actually quite difficult. So I've uncovered two possible ways to make an easy discovery. Because Sirius B trails behind it, set up your telescope so you're pointing at a wall or a telephone pole ahead of where Sirius is going to track in front of you. Wait for Sirius to disappear behind the wall, and then you should be able to have a nice easy view of the 8.4 magnitude companion. The other option is to get a hold of an occulting eyepiece, which is an eyepiece that has a strip going straight down the middle of the field of view. It's not only good for finding things like these hard to find double stars, but if you're ever interested in looking for the moons of Mars, it's a useful tool for that as well. But either one of those tricks, you should be able to see a white dwarf with your own eyes. Now, you can't expect me to go through an entire talk without talking about various stars. And my pick this time was Omicron Ceti. And I picked this star before the news broke about the latest variant. This is just a weird, terrible coincidence. So we can talk about it by its other name, Mira, the miraculous, the first well-known intrinsically variable star. People knew about Algol, but that one is actually an eclipsing variable star. The star itself doesn't change brightness. This one does, and it famously does. It has a pretty huge range, 2.5 to 9th magnitude. Right now it's about 7th magnitude and dropping, so you'll need a telescope to find it. But when it pops on the upspring, it's going to be easily visible to the naked eye. You'll be able to see how the constellation Cetus visibly changes when the mirror is at its full brightness. It's one of the long-term variables. It takes about 400 days for the star to expand, cool off, dim. Then as it dims, there's less light pressure, gravity pulls it back, it squashes down, the gravity increases the pressure, it heats up again, it brightens up again, and this cycle goes on and on every 400 days for many thousands of years. The star is currently in its death throes, so enjoy it now. In 500,000 years, it may be gone. And I'm actually going to throw in an extra variable star, Nova Cassiopeia 2021, or V1405 Cass. 9 months after discovery, it's still visible to small telescopes. It's down around 9th magnitude. It stuck around 7th magnitude for a long time and just recently started to drop. Pretty close to Beta Cassiopeiae, or M52. And I'm going to bring it to your attention and plead with you to go to the website of the American Association of Variable Star Observers, look up V1405 Cassiopeia, and figure out what you can do to get a real live observation of this and contribute it to the database. Be part of the world of real science. It's an interesting subject. Typically, nova don't stay steady for 7 months and then drop off. They kind of drop off steadily. So why this one's behaving oddly, no one knows, and the scientists who want to know this want your data. So stuff coming up in the world of spaceflight. Obviously, the big number one, the one everybody cares about, the James Webb Space Telescope is confirmed to be launching on December 22nd. All the accidents over, all the bumps and the vibrations, everything has been tested. So this is it. We've got all our fingers and toes crossed that it's a success, because unlike the Hubble Space Telescope, it will be unrepairable once it's up there. So a lot of hopes and wishes going up there with it. Virgin Launcher 1, they're going to be attempting to launch a satellite from a 747. sometime in December. That's the official plan anyway. The exact date is still to be determined. NASA will be launching the Imaging X-ray Polarimetry Explorer on December 9th. And we've got lots and lots of space station passes coming up. We've got lots of passes in the evenings until December 11th, and then from the 16th until the next meeting, we will have lots of morning passes. It's always fun to go out there and see with the naked eye a spaceship flying overhead with a bunch of astronauts in it. It makes you feel like you're living in the future. Heavensabove.com is my go-to place for times and locations of passes. Most modern planetarium software will have the information as well. You can schedule your phone to ring you every time the space station's passing over. And always, what if it's cloudy? That's certainly a concern for us at this time of year. And I'm going to say once again, Zooniverse.org has a giant heap of citizen science projects, dozens merely in astronomy, but all kinds of other sciences are represented as well if you want to spend your spare time in computer cycles doing something useful for the world of science. We have 4 projects that I thought looked interesting this time: Backyard Worlds, Planet 9, Searching for Exoplanets, Disk Detective, where we're looking at other stars to try and see if we can find planetary disks or forming planets around it. Gravity Spy, working to reduce data from the thingy with the gravity wave detector. And reducing data from the Super WASP variable star observing project, one of those multiple lens telescopes doing sky surveys. So all those things are available for any of us to step in and do our bit to help out the cause of science. So that is more or less what I've got for this month. If you have any questions, I will be very happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Andy. Great coverage of the sky this month. Do we have any questions for Andy, Emma?
Nope, no questions from the audience.
Okay, well, thanks very much for listening.
Okay, thanks again, Andy. Our next speaker is Reza Mohamed, and he'll talk to us about stacking and processing astro-images. Go ahead, Reza.
Good evening, folks. My name is Reza Mohamed. I live in Toronto, Canada, and I'm a member of the Royal Astronomical Society of Toronto. Since I joined the society a few years ago, I've benefited far more than I've contributed. So this presentation is just a small token of my appreciation and a way to give back. I've recorded a video explaining how I stack, process images of M45 Pleiades using Deep Sky Stacker, Sequitur, and Photoshop. I use Photoshop for all my photography and astrophotography images, and I use DaVinci Resolve to create this video. The video is a bit longer than 25 minutes, and at the end of the video, I'll take a few questions. So please enjoy.
In this video, I'll review, stack, and process images of a deep sky object. The equipment I used to capture the images were all controlled by Stellarmate installed on a Raspberry Pi device. I'll begin by doing a quick overview of the images in Adobe Bridge. Then I'll review them in Deep Sky Stacker. I'll then stack the images in Deep Sky Stacker and do the same in Sequitur. Next, I'll go into Photoshop to check the difference between the stacked images. First, I prepare my folders with appropriate labels, such as lights, darks, biases, and flats. However, in this video, I'll only be working with light images. In Adobe Bridge, I do a quick assessment of the files looking for elongated stars, star trails, noise, distortions, and light pollution. I also screen for aircraft and satellites. What I'm looking for is something like this: clean round stars with light rays and very little distortion. I delete files that have unexplained anomalies. And I also delete files with elongated stars. And the remaining files look fine, so I'll keep them all. In Deep Sky Stacker, I screen the images more carefully, deleting any files I don't want. I also check the noise levels in the dark and bias files and the vignetting in the flat files. Since I'll only be stacking light files in this video, I've only included one bias, dark, and flat file. Sliding the slider over allows me to see the noise levels in the dark and bias files and the vignetting in the flat file. In the light files, I look for any distortions or anomalies that might affect the final image. Now I need to register the files, which places a number in the score column. The score gives me an indication of the quality of the image. First, I select all the light images I intend to stack and deselect the bias, dark, and flat images here because I'm not stacking these. Now I'll register the files I've selected, and I'd like to check the score before I stack them, so I'll deselect this. Since I've checked all the files I intend to stack, I'll leave this at 100%. Now I'll check the star detection threshold to get an idea of how many stars it will detect. Then I check the stacking parameters to make sure that the final stacked image will be a TIFF file. In the recommended settings, I select the best options I think will give me the best result. You can play with these options in the recommended settings to see what the effect would be. I leave all the other parameters the same, and then I go ahead and register. After I register the files, I change the sort order of the score column to check for the lowest and highest scores. Then I quickly review the images with the lowest scores to determine if I should throw them out. I'll look for distortions or anomalies that might skew the final image, but in this case it seems as though they're all okay. Since the stars in the image with the highest score are similar to the stars in the image with the lowest score, I'll go ahead and stack them all. So I click on Stack Check Pictures, and then I review the recommended settings once again to make sure nothing's changed. And then I click OK. Deep Sky Stacker then displays the final image for you to make adjustments, but I leave my adjustments for Photoshop. The final stacked image is saved in the same folder as the other images, and it's named Autosave TIFF. Now I'll open up Sequitur in order to stack the images and compare with Deep Sky Stacker. I'll load the star images or light images, and I'll disregard the autosave that Deep Sky Stacker created. You'll notice that Sequitur has selected one of the images as a base image. Noise files, that is bias and dark files, can also be included for noise reduction, as well as flat files for vignetting correction. Now in output, I need to type a name for the final stacked image. The stacked image will be created in the same folder alongside the autosave file, and I'll compare the two in Photoshop. Next, I go to Composition, I leave the star alignment option, and select the best pixels. This option is best if you have more than 3 images to stack. Of course, you can play with these options to see what the desired effect or result would be in the final image. I'll choose to remove dynamic noises and leave the other options as they are, then start the stacking. After it completes, it displays the final image. Then I switch over to Adobe Bridge to view the stacked images. I look at light rays around the stars, nebulosity, and consistency in the shape of the stars. If I'm satisfied with the resulting images, I'll open them in Photoshop to do a more detailed examination. I'll begin with the Sequitur file. The image files open up automatically in Photoshop. If we go to Image Adjustments Equalize, we can stretch the image to get a better look at the nebulosity. This Sequitur file shows a fair amount of nebulosity. Now I'll switch back to Adobe Bridge and open up the Deep Sky Stacker file. I'll open up the autosave file created by Deep Sky Stacker. By default, Deep Sky Stacker creates a 32-bit file, which I've got to reduce to 16 bits to take advantage of all the Photoshop adjustments. I'll check the various methods Photoshop uses to convert the file and select the best method. In most cases, I find the default good enough. If you look closely, you can see a little vignetting in this image. Next, I'll use the equalize adjustment to have a look at the nebulosity. You can see the nebulosity looks more pronounced in this image than in the sequitur image, so we'll process both and compare them just the same. Back in Adobe Bridge, I'll open up the autosave file in Camera Raw to make some first adjustments. I'd like to keep this nebulosity visible while I make the adjustments. The temperature can be adjusted to make the image cooler or warmer. I also like to keep these light rays coming off the star visible as I make the adjustments. I make all the adjustments necessary to enhance the image. By looking at the histogram, I try not to overexpose or underexpose the image. I prefer to make the curve adjustments in Photoshop. I generally try to keep the image looking softer rather than too sharp. Color grading allows you to adjust the luminosity and the colors if necessary. Since all looks well, I'll open it in Photoshop. Now here in Photoshop, I'll zoom in to have a look at the nebulosity around these stars, and then I'll adjust the levels. I'll do the adjustments in such a way as not to clip any detail. Next, I'll make adjustments to the shadows and highlights. And I'll adjust the mid-tone for a better contrast. Next, I'll have a look at the exposure and gamma correction. I'll do what I can to make the nebulosity stand out. I'm happy with this. Now I'll make an S-curve adjustment to bring out the nebulosity more. I've also installed a filter from Pro Digital software called AstroFlat Pro that allows me to remove the gradient. These sliders allow me to make the subject stand out more against the background. I can also clean up the edges and zoom in and remove some of the noise. And here is the before and after comparison. Now I'll save this image as a Photoshop file and I'll begin the processing of the sequitur file. This is the file that was stacked in Sequitor. If I go to image mode, you'll see that Sequitor has already stacked this image at 16 bits per channel. So no changes are necessary to be able to take advantage of all the adjustments in Photoshop. I'll begin by adjusting the levels, taking care not to clip any detail. The goal is to enhance the subject against the background. You can actually adjust and readjust the levels until you're comfortable with the results. Now I'll go directly into AstroFlat Pro to enhance the subject against the background. I'll adjust these sliders to enhance the nebulosity. And click OK when I'm ready. I'll now adjust the shadows and highlights. And then make an S-curve adjustment. Now we'll compare the two images. Sequitor and Deep Sky Stacker. We'll zoom in to get a better comparison. The Deep Sky Stacker image seems to have less noise and seems smoother, so I think I'll go with the Deep Sky Stacker image. And here's the final image.
All right, so do we have any questions for Reza?
Yes, our first question comes in from Aaron. Aaron wants to get a Pi, but they seem to be out of the 8 GB models. Does anyone have any experience with a 4 GB version, and does it still work well?
Yes, I've been using the 4 gigabyte version, and I haven't had problems except with my low-end Canon camera that I started with. There seemed to be a driver issue because I use StellarMate, and StellarMate uses the Indie drivers, and I found a bit of a glitch when using the camera. So for some reason it was just shut off. But I haven't actually explored using better model cameras or cameras specifically designed for astrophotography. So I do have to explore that a little bit more equipment. Other than that, I haven't had any problems with running StellarMate on the Raspberry Pi 4 to coordinate the equipment.
Thank you. This question also comes in from Aaron. When creating flats, his tend to be taken when it's getting a little bit too light outside, and the blue is very right shifted next to the other colors. Does this degrade the value of the flat?
Well, I've experimented with flats using a white t-shirt and the light from my iPad. And, you know, it's a trial and error issue. I haven't really nailed a particular method of doing it the best way. But you know, it's trial and error pretty much. But I see a number of people that use the white t-shirt method to filter the light, and that seems to work. It's worked a little bit with mine. I still have more experimenting to do in that area.
Thank you. Lewis would like to know, can the image adjustments also be done in apps like GIMP?
Well, I've used GIMP. I started in Photoshop, so for me, Photoshop just comes naturally. I've used GIMP as well, and GIMP seems to have a lot of great features. So yes, you can use GIMP. Other amateur astronomers, astrophotographers have done some pretty remarkable work using GIMP. So I'd say yes, go ahead and try that, because it does work.
This question comes in from Eric. What kind of Raspberry Pi do you use?
The Raspberry Pi 4. And like I said, I've installed StellarMate to be able to coordinate the equipment.
Another question from Aaron. Is there a minimum FWHM value that you shoot for when looking for quality lights?
Well, ideally you want to get the best possible image, yes, when you're out in the field. So I say I don't remember exactly if it's the higher value or the lower value, but definitely keep an eye on that for sure, because you do want to capture as much detail as possible without clipping any of the data.
This question also comes in from Lewis. What method do you use to transfer from the Pi to your desktop?
I use Wi-Fi. I use VNC viewer, and on the Raspberry Pi, I've got the VNC server set up.
Cool. How much does AstroFlat Pro cost?
I don't remember the exact figure, but it was very reasonable for what I get out of it.
This is our last question coming in from Ralph. With the manipulation of the image data, is there a loss of scientific data?
No. It's all about signal to noise ratio, and as far as the scientific data goes, you know, could you be more specific? Because all I can say is that I'm just in it for the photography.
Okay, thank you. That's it for the questions.
Reza, thanks again for the video you created and the comparison between Sequitur and Deep Sky Stacker. That's very interesting and useful. And I believe your video is available on your YouTube channel, correct? For future reference, if we want to go back and review it, it's available on YouTube. And of course, it'll also be available on the Toronto Center's YouTube channel if you want to watch the tutorial again. All right, so let's move on to our next speaker. It's Malcolm Park, and he'll tell us about his Aurora chase adventure.
Thank you, Paul. Hello, everyone. My name is Malcolm Park, and among other things, I chase Aurora, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about a chase I recently did. Just a little bit about me before I start. I'm from Toronto, but I live just north of Kingston now, in Harrow-Smith, Ontario, which is right beside Sydenham. It's about 15 minutes north of Kingston. I was a member of the North York Astronomical Association. I still am. I was president of that club for a while and coordinator for Starfest. I was an associate member of the Toronto Centre for a few years, but haven't been back to Toronto quite some time. But I am a member of the Kingston Centre of the RASC. So that's enough about me. I'm gonna talk about this event that occurred on October the 28th, and it carried on for about a week. But first, what is an aurora chase? An aurora chase, if you leave the comfort of your home and travel any distance, I consider you to be a chaser. And this is an example of an aurora chase I did in 2012. And I lived in Cobourg at the time. And there was a KP5 event, and it was clear. But where I lived surrounded by light pollution. As people in Toronto know all too well, you have to get away from light pollution. And so the North York Astronomical Association has a facility north of Cobourg, about half an hour north. So I packed everything up and I drove up to Oak Heights, and I chased the clear sky, the dark sky where the aurora was. This is another example of a chase. This is a solar eclipse chase. And that was a lot of driving. I'm sure many of you made drives similar to mine in 2017. That was a really, truly worthwhile experience. But the point here is that if an event is going to occur and you want to see it badly enough, you'll do whatever it takes to get in the path of that event. Now, storm chasing is another kind of chasing that I've done. I've spent a few weeks on the Great Plains, and this is a tornado that I saw from about 10 kilometers away. The zoom on my lens makes it appear that much closer, but it was quite far away. But that was in 2016. That's another chase. I've chased the Geminids. There have been many times when the Geminids have fallen, well, at least two in the last 6 or 7 years, I think, where the Geminids fell on a moonless night, but the forecast here was hopeless. And so one time I went down to Arizona, and this particular time I went to New Mexico. It was just as cold in New Mexico as it was at home, but the sky was clear. So mission accomplished. And I've even chased lunar eclipses. I recall there was a lunar eclipse in Vermont. This particular one was in Texas. The lunar eclipse in Vermont I think it was Vermont, and Charlie, Sheila, Sabatoff were heading east in their trailer, and we talked about this eclipse, and it turned out that this lunar eclipse had an ISS transit, and the intersect point for that was on the other side of the border. So although we didn't get our transit picture, we did get to the eclipse. But this one was in Texas, and the sky was just, well, not only was it the sky, it was, I believe, a nice comfortable 60, 70 degrees when the eclipse was at totality in the middle of the night. And I believe it was minus 20 back home on this particular night. So that was fun. But back to the present, and at least to the current year. October the 28th, there was a lot of solar activity on that particular day. And the result of that was that the forecasters determined that a coronal mass ejection was heading towards us. And they made forecasts of epic aurora, I will say. But this is the event on the sun that triggered all the mayhem. The black and white, in the end, it turns out, would appear to me to be the best image, even though the color ones are interesting. But it really feels like an explosion when you look at it in black and white. So on the next slide, this is the model that determined that a CME was heading towards the Earth. And the white is intense, and then the blue is, you know, nothing, and everything in between. So I'll just play that one more time. So you can see they're saying by the timestamp up at the top that October 30th and 31st were the impact dates. And this is a screen grab from the website SolarHam. I go to SolarHam a lot for things like this detailed forecast and some of the other things that they post. It's a good companion to spaceweather.com in that way. And lo and behold, the aurora forecast on October, this is from the 29th for the 30th, 31st, and 1st, was for a KP7. And boy, KP7, I have some good memories of KP7. I've only seen KP7 once. This is a KP7, and it's from 2012, and I got an APOD for this photo. And the memory is ingrained in my brain here. This was, I don't know that forecasts were as good as they are today, but I lived in Whitby at the time, and when I got off the train in the evening, it was dark. I looked north and I thought I saw a green glow from the GO station down in Whitby. And I called my friend Tony Ward, and I said, "What are you up to? Let's go north of the city lights and see what we can see." And so Tony and I picked Tony up in my car, and we drove up to Brooklyn, Ontario, which is it's right about where the new 407 highway runs, at Highway 12, if you know the area. And we got out of the car about 8:30. And yeah, there was a glow on the horizon. I had my camera set up on a tripod at the side of the road doing a time lapse. And then all of a sudden, all heck broke loose. And this happened at about 9:30. And we were calling all of our friends and telling everyone that we could think of to go have a look. And I took a picture of Tony that day, and this picture was published on the front cover of Sky News in the one of the following issues. And that's Tony Ward of Starfest fame. He's usually the MC at Starfest. Anyway, KP7 sounded really enticing. And so I had to figure out, how am I going to chase this aurora event, or do I need to even chase this aurora event? So let's see what the situation is. On the 28th, Thursday, there's a CME. On the 29th, they're forecasting an aurora of they're forecasting a KP7 for the 30th and the 31st. Now, if the predictions are correct, I can only even think about this on a weekend, because we have a really nice big dog, and it requires a human being to look after it. So while I'm retired, my wife works, so weekdays are out. The only way this works is if I can be away on the weekend. So it fits pretty well for that requirement. Now, the next question is, where is it going to be clear? So here is the clear sky chart from, I believe, the 29th or 30th. And the little hash mark here, that's where I live. It's hopeless, hopeless, unless you go west of this boundary. So, okay, there's a possibility if I could go over there. And here's another map which shows the visibility zones, and the red is not visible. The green is likely to be visible, and the yellow is dodgy. But because of the clear sky chart cloud prediction showing this river of clear blue in between these two white areas, I thought there was hope. So I thought, well, what's up there? How am I going to, like, what are the logistics? You know, I need somewhere to get warm. It's going to be cold. It would be nice to have electricity and Wi-Fi and all this stuff. So I found, you know, my hope was to find a waterfront location that I would get reflections, and I would see the. It would just enhance things, I think, if I found the waterfront location. And I found this thing called Ranger Lake Resort. So if you zoom in, Ranger Lake Resort is on Ranger Lake. It's on the south shore of Ranger Lake, facing north. And an even tighter zoom on Google Earth shows there's this dock here, which looks like it would be perfect. So I made a quick call to discuss with my wife. Excuse me, no issues there. So I call Ranger Lake, and they are a dream. They have everything I need. They have a nice log cabin, a wood stove, and they have Wi-Fi, internet. So I tell them I'll be there around 5 p.m. on Saturday, and I pack everything up on Friday night. And this is what I've gotten myself into. Home here is just north of Kingston, and driving to Toronto, north to Sudbury, west to Ranger Lake, 9.5 hours. I do drives like this a lot. I wouldn't say every day, but I do. I don't have a problem doing a drive like this. So getting up at 7 a.m. get me there about 5. Getting there at 5, sunset at that time was before the time change. It was about 6:30. And so that gave me plenty of time to scout, set up equipment during the daylight, and get my time lapse going and stuff like that. So it all fit very well. The traffic was fine for a Saturday morning at 5 a.m. or sorry, at 7 a.m. No problem. I did alter my return trip. I went up the north end of Algonquin Park to come home. just for something different. Just to give you an idea of what the skies are like where I live and where I was going. So I live right about here. So if I'm pointing north, there's not too much light pollution. If I'm pointing south, it's a bit of an issue. But generally, it's not too bad for astrophotography. But this little dot here, I put that on the map. There's actually no light pollution there. That's just to remind me where the spot is. So that's where the lodge is, and there is no light pollution there. Okay, chase day, Saturday, October 30th, 7 a.m. So as I say, I packed the car the night before. I'm ready to go bright and early. And what's it like here at home? Cloudy, rainy, dark, foggy, miserable. I'm happy to leave. I do a sanity check before I leave, just to make sure that the satellite and the clear sky chart are in agreement, that I'm not making a horrible mistake weather-wise. Looks okay to me. So all systems are go. So as I said, it was raining when I started. It was raining all the way to Toronto and up to Barrie. By the time I got north of Barrie, the rain had finished and it was dry. And by the time I got to Sudbury, I could see the blue sky in the west. And by the time I got to Elliott Lake-ish, it was really clear. And this is an example of the day. So from a weather standpoint, mission accomplished. So here I am after I've arrived, and I'm on the South Shore. Everything is as I expected. The cabin beside the white car there is the cabin that I had. And the dock was on the other side of that lodge on the left, just down the hill towards the water. And it was just beautiful. And the lodge is open year round because they cater also to ice fishing. This lake is huge and deep, and they have lake trout. So it's a year-round operation. And so now here is my setup. And this is the dock that I saw on Google Maps. And I am pointing due north. And I'll talk a bit about my gear after the time-lapse sequence. But at this point, we'll play the video that I came up with. there is some irony to be presented in this presentation. So the KP index only got to 4 on this particular night. The display was mainly back of camera only. There was a hint of it in the to the naked eye, not the glory of the KP7 that I was hoping for. And here's the solar activity on the top and the KP index at the bottom. It just got up to KP4 on the 2 days. But that was on the Sunday. By Wednesday, all heck broke loose in the aurora KP index, and we had the KP7 that wasn't forecast. It was forecast to be KP6, and Alberta got the best of it. The aurora oval looked like that, and from my backyard I got this. Now you could chuckle and say, geez, all that driving, and the KP7 was visible from your backyard eventually. But I don't see it that way. I enjoyed myself and I had fun. But even this KP7, that's as good as it got. That's the best frame from the KP7. Alberta, or Western Canada, they got the good stuff. And this is a satellite picture showing why. We are, or at least I am, down here. That's Kingston. I don't think we could be, or Toronto. I don't think we could, either one of us could be further away from the aurora anywhere in Canada, really, unless we were maybe in Windsor. Meanwhile, over in Western Canada, it was right on top. So this is a satellite shot, and the bright stuff is the aurora. So that's just an aside at the end, where my chase was not wholly unsuccessful, not wholly successful, but I did get an enjoyable time-lapse sequence out of it. And I'll just finish off with a little bit about how I create my time-lapse sequences and the capture process and the software side of things. So in this case, the gear is the Nikon D800 DSLR, the 14-24 f2.8 lens. It was shot at 14 millimeters and f2.8. Standard tripod and dew strap and controller and intervalometer. And all of this is run from an extension cord in the lodge that I showed that I was staying at. So having power is a really huge benefit. Otherwise, I'd be looking at batteries, and that's very difficult. I have a TP-Link wireless portable router, battery-powered router on the in my kit, and the reason for that is it provides wireless connectivity to the camera, allowing me to change the settings on the camera without touching it, and also using software to automate that feature. And the software that does that is called QDSLR Dashboard, and it runs on my Samsung Galaxy tablet. So this is what the camera did look like. The white device on the top is that router. There's a dew strap, intervalometer, and dew heater controller. And the intervals were 16-second intervals maximum. So the 16-second interval never changed. I started off in the daytime in, say, 1/40th or 1/80th of a second, and still with a 16-second, progressed my exposures all the way to 13 seconds and ISO 3200. I believe it was ISO 100 to begin with. So this is the interface on my tablet using QDSLR Dashboard. And this is how I control settings changing on my DSLR. And it's important for a period of time that I be able to do this. And the period of time is from when it's daylight until fully dark. And during that time, I use the settings over here to tell the software to drop my exposure from 1/110th of a second to 13 seconds, and to change the ISO from ISO 100 to ISO 3200. And it does this because on the camera, I'm shooting in RAW and JPEG, and the JPEG is sent wirelessly from the camera to the software. It analyzes and takes a 5-frame average of the brightness of those frames. And once this brightness threshold drops, it changes automatically the shutter speed. And once the shutter speed reaches its slowest shutter speed, then it changes the ISO. And then once the ISO reaches its target, I don't need this device anymore, and I can turn it off. The intervalometer is connected to the camera, and it continues all night to take a 13-second ISO 3200 exposure every 16 seconds. 3 seconds was necessary to allow the transfer of an image to the software. So in post-processing, I use LR Time-Lapse and Adobe Lightroom. And I'm just going to show you the screens for each and how they work together. I'm not going to go in depth on this at all. But this is LR Time-Lapse. Oops, I missed a slide there. Sorry about that. I want you to understand how this works. So LR Time-Lapse is a time-lapse processing piece of software designed for users of Lightroom. Lightroom is a database with an image processing user interface, but it's primarily a database. LR Time-Lapse connects to Lightroom's database and affects changes to that database. And those changes then can be seen in Lightroom in the user interface. You go back and forth between the two programs to make your edits. At the end of the day, you end up with a balanced sequence. So this is the preview screen and the working screen of LR Time-Lapse. And I'll just drag this across, and it shows you how one of the features of the preview. All of these columns represent one of the editable fields in Lightroom. For example, when you're in Lightroom develop mode, when I started, my image looked like this. When I finished, and this is one of the 2800 frames. Each of these adjustments here was made from LR Time-Lapse, not by moving a slider. I have 2800 frames in Lightroom to edit. I'm not doing them one at a time. I do not have the patience for that. And this is the benefit of LR Time-Lapse. So what happens is, just change the view. You set a bunch of keyframes in LR Time-Lapse, and you just edit the keyframes. So for example, I edited frame 1, and then frame 2, and then frame 3. Sequentially from 1 through 10, saved all of my changes, went back to LR Time-Lapse, and LR Time-Lapse calculates the transitions required for the 280 frames in between each of the 10 keyframes. And then it gives you a graphical representation of the smoothness of those changes, and it allows you to deflicker them. And at the end of the day, you come up with a vastly superior presentation to what you would do, let's say, manually. So I won't go into it in too much more detail than that, just to say, you know, at the end of the day, to create your sequence, you select the LR time-lapse export feature, and it sends it off to LR time-lapse, and you get this render screen, and you end up with the presentation that I showed you without the music. Adding the music is another thing entirely. And I think that will cover the process of creating a time lapse.
Okay, very good. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing this with us, Malcolm. Great adventure and great time lapse, and also very educational as well. I've never tried a time lapse myself. Maybe I'll get to it one day. Do we have any questions for Malcolm?
Yes, we have one question coming in from Rask Toronto. I've seen a fair number of auroras up to the 55th latitude, but they were always green. Is it a question of using filters with photography to bring out the brilliant colors?
No, it's a function of the molecular interactions in the atmosphere and the energy in the solar storm that's hitting us. So I think when you're mainly seeing green, those would be in the KP2 and 3 range up north, like far up north, especially, you know, in the range of Yellowknife or Iceland. I believe, and Alaska, they tend to get aurora throughout the winter continuously in that color range. And I'm not sure if that's where you, or if northern Alberta or something like that. But when we in the southern latitudes start to see aurora, just by nature of the energy that's required for the aurora to be visible here, it tends to produce more color.
Well, thank you. That's it for the questions.
Okay. Thanks again, Malcolm. Really appreciate your presentation. So that wraps up the speakers for this evening. Let's go to Tom Luton with the announcements for tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. So let's get started with the announcements. So we've got 2 types of meetings here online on YouTube. We've just finished one of our recreational astronomy nights, and we also have our speaker nights. Both, like I said, both of these are here live on YouTube. If you're joining us live, please use the YouTube chat to say hello, to answer a few questions for the presenters. If you are a new member coming from far, far away, by the way, I'm speaking to you from my couch here in Toronto. Introduce yourself and let us know where you're from. So our next recreational astronomy night is on Wednesday, the 5th of January at 7:30 p.m. Chris Vaughn will be discussing the sky this year, things to look forward to in 2022. Claudio Oriani will be discussing Automate Your Telescope with Remote Desktop and Nina. And Manu Mukherjee, my apologies for botching that, will be talking about my journey into astrophotography. All of this will be all live here on YouTube. And if you'd like to present something yourself, please contact Paul Markov. Now, details of our upcoming speakers night in January are still to be announced. Due to the holiday season, we have no speakers night in December. So we are now on a holiday break for 1 month. So our next speakers night is Wednesday, the 19th of January, 7:30 p.m. Please join us. DDO events coming up on Sunday, the 12th of December, from 12:30 to 1 p.m. is Sunday stargazing. $6.78 registration fee. Links to the registration can be found at rastio.ca. On Friday the 17th at 7 p.m., DDO Up in the Sky, $12.50 registration fee. Again, links are on the website. And then in the new year, DDO Astronomy Speakers Night on Saturday, January the 7th, 7 p.m. Details to be announced. $12.50 registration fee. Again, links on the website. This is where I get to plug some of our observing certificates. Now, it has been cloudy lately, but before that, I hope you had a chance to enjoy the skies and do a little observing. And if you were working on your certificates, we're reminding you that if you're done, please fill out the paperwork and get your observations in so you can get yourself a certificate and one of our lovely pins. And if you haven't been working on a certificate, you might want to think about it. We've got a whole bunch of them. Explore the Universe, Exploring the Moon with Binoculars or Telescopes, our Messier Catalog, the finest new general catalog of deep sky objects, Double Stars, the Isabel Williamson Lunar Certificate, Deep Sky Gems, and Deep Sky Challenge. Full details available at www.rasc.ca/certificate-programs. Our EPO committee continues to do virtual star parties and EPO talks. We have done things with the Ontario Science Centre, the David Dunlop Observatory, the St. Clair O'Connor Community, Millennium Square, the Dunlop Institute, with Brownies, Cubs, Scouts, schools, etc., and with new observers to visual astronomy. If you'd like to have a talk with your group, please contact public education at rasctio.ca. Our observing sessions are still suspended until further notice. So at Bayview Village Park, the Long Sault Conservation Area, and the Ontario Science Centre. The CAO, access to CAO facilities by members, families only in a non-communal fashion. The total site occupancy is limited to 10 bookings up to 25 individuals, with one member or one/family upstairs in the house, and the rest of the folks making day use only or camping in RVs or tents. Just a reminder, though, that we are approaching the winter season. In fact, we've probably snowed in at this point, and the last kilometer of the road in is not plowed. As well, the Soulor Observatory is open. The Jeff Brown Observatory is still closed. Full details are on the website. Please read before making your booking. This is one place where I get to plug the joys of RASC membership. Please renew your membership online at secure.rasc.ca. If COVID has resulted in some financial difficulties, the RASC does have an emergency fund, completely confidential, and as well, gifts memberships are available for purchase for the holiday season. Contact mempub@rasc.ca for full details. And like I said, the holiday season is upon us, and so on behalf of Council, I'd like to wish everyone watching a very merry solstice and a happy perhelion. Apologies. Very happy perhelion. And with that, I'd like to wish everyone a good night. Thank you very much for joining us. You can follow us on all the forms of social media. If you enjoyed what you watched, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Be safe, keep looking up, and good night.